Let's talk about vibe coders in this video and vibe coding in general. This is an interesting topic because I've been seeing a lot of things on Twitter recently. For example, this is one of the big tweets that got over 2 million views and over 6,000 likes, where this guy created a SaaS, a basic software using Cursor, and then he got brutally hacked on internet, right? So I want to take out this moment and talk a few things about vibe coding as I understand it and what you should be doing if you are a vibe coder yourself. So let's start from the very starting, right? So let's actually start from what exactly has been happening in the AI world on the coding part. So, coding, as we know, has been changed a lot because of these AI softwares now, like Cursor and even like, GPT models and so on. They are able to write code for you based on whatever English prompts you are telling them, right? So English to coding is now the hot thing. However, what you have to realize is coding or programming in general is an extremely complex or extremely big thing in itself that cannot be fully expressed in English language. I'm not saying that it's hard to code. There is a difference. What I'm saying is that there are more things that you can do with the software than you can probably express in just a simple sentence, right? I believe that is where exactly the problem is, right? Because when you start to build software which is complex, when there is authentication, when there is, authorization, when you need some level of user access to some things and some level of access to other things, it becomes increasingly hard to just specify that in English because it's a communication language, not a systems programming language, which is like a JavaScript or C, C++ or Python or any of these, right? So what happens is that usually context is lost, right? Over here, the first problem that happens when you are vibe coding is that some amount of context is lost. What you want to actually do from your heart and your brain and what actually is done by the agent or the AI person itself. This is precisely not a new problem. This is also what something happens when you're hiring a freelancer or somebody who's just a developer. You tell them something in English and they write code for it. The difference here is that a lot of context and a lot of things they are also able to fill in with their experience, right? Which these models unfortunately do not have because they have been trained on public code, and public code in a lot of cases is vulnerable, right? They are able to reason across now and they are able to understand, especially the newer ones like DeepSeek. By the way, like a huge fan of DeepSeek because it's like a really good model. But still, fundamentally, these are large language models which are trained on use cases which are publicly available, right? So first of all, the context is lost. Second of all, if your model is not good enough, it will not generate code which is good in the first place, right? There is a working code, and then there is good code, right? One does not necessarily mean the other thing. You can have working code without it being like well maintained, and you can have well maintained code without it being working at all, right? So with AI, what happens is that as project becomes more and more complex, you go from good code to working code because it's trying to now patch around things and so on and so forth. And at some point, you just land at bad code, which is neither working properly and nor it is like a maintainable code base, right? So that is also a huge problem which I see with these models which have limited context windows and intelligence right now. And of course, this is not the way to build softwares at all, right? Because if you look at production softwares, let me take a step back on it and tell you, this is not the way to build production softwares. Let me discuss about what I mean exactly by this. See, production softwares require a lot of mission critical things. Authentication should not fail. Databases should not go down. Your backend should be stable. Your front end should be usable and so on. You can write parts of your production system with AI agents. That is also what we do. Everyone has started doing that. But we are still developers. We are people who know what we are doing. You guys who are like purely vibe coders and you don't really understand programming, what you are trying to do is build complete SaaS platforms using Cursor with just enough information that on surface you know what backend is or authentication is. For example, this person Leo who was like hacked other day, I don't know, maybe he's a programmer, maybe he has some background in coding, but most importantly, I feel the way this whole thread was discussed and how this was carried out, I feel that he's not a developer. He's not somebody who has built applications earlier which were secure, which were robust and so on. So I would obviously say that don't just build software and start advertising it that I just just built it as a no-code thing, vibe coded it with Cursor, especially if you are not a developer and you haven't done the code review and done what is happening in the system, because that will attract this level of attention. And trust me, this is not a good level of attention. You have 2 million views, that might sound very cool, but you might have thousands of dollars in losses because of the bills that you end up paying for serverless abuse that happens on AWS. Or if you are actually having a moderately popular application like his, then you are liable for the people that got hacked because of using your application, right? So this actually is a bad thing. You cannot be a vibe production developer. There is no term as vibe production dev, right? The only term that you will probably find is, if you are a vibe coder, just build vibe personal software, right? Don't try to enter the production dev environment unless you also know how the programming itself generally works. I'm not saying that this vibe coding wave and vibe coding thing is bad. In fact, it is actually really good, because this will actually push a lot of people to see that, hey, I can do so much even if I don't know programming. I can actually build a lot more cool things and secure stuff if I understand how to code well, right? So this is going to be a bridge between somebody who's, non-developer to a vibe personal software dev. So I feel this is like a new way of, learning things that you learn from vibe coding. This is the initial thing which sparks interest of new people, kids, and people who are starting with programming. And then they realize that, oh, programming is so powerful. Back in the day, I started programming because I found HTML and CSS fascinating. I used to visit websites and I would see those widgets. Back in the day when I was still learning programming, it was also possible to run Flash inside browsers, right? So Flash had a very interesting concept that you can run a very detailed animation or detailed widgets within the website. So I used to have that one globe widget. I don't know what that name was, but it used to show like visitors coming from different places on your website. This was the very first thing which attracted me to web development, that wow, I can build these interfaces. That similar thing is now, I believe, on a Cursor, on a Claude level, on OpenAI, GPT level, where you are able to just create basic games. You can just write something, just build some game. Now you would be frustrated to add a very small detail. Some advanced AI version would be able to do that. But as you see a vision that, okay, I want to start a gaming studio of my own, maybe where we are creating like hundreds of small games like Miniclip, just dream something, that would give you initial spark of shifting yourself from a vibe personal software dev to a production dev. But don't do these things. These are like just plain right embarrassing for you, and this is embarrassing for the community, because what will happen is that every senior developer or every software developer would actually kick you down, because they know like it's not possible to write production grade software vibe coding your way there, right? Because again, the fundamentals remains the same. These AI models that are trained, they are trained on documentation. That's fine. So if you're using like a popular package for authentication and so on and so forth, they will use it nicely. But at some point, when you have to actually build a custom piece of software which is specific to your requirement, it's falling back to its knowledge of the public code it is finding on GitHub, the code it has been trained on, and so on and so forth. And most of that code is bad, right? So it's going to give you output that is not that good. It's not about the existing libraries. It's not about the existing systems. You cannot just build a full company, a full product based on only existing libraries and tools. Obviously, it has to come, some of your glue code has to be yours, completely, truly yours, right? That is where the problem majorly happens. But of course, right, models also are not really that good that they can just completely replace a developer. And that is also why this happens. So what my recommendation is to you, if you are a vibe dev, vibe coder, only build software for yourself. Ideally keep it local, ideally keep it with yourself. If you want to deploy it, but don't advertise it. And especially don't advertise it that I have vibe coded this, because you are just attracting a lot of hungry developers who are trying to prove you wrong by hacking your shit, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to actually be a little calm. You want to create good software. You want to understand what that software exactly is doing, how it is working, and then make your way towards this production dev pipeline, right? If this is a learning path, this is how it should be, that you are a non-developer, you start experimenting with these new AI tools, and now you try to become a developer yourself, right? And then you keep on using these vibe tools to create good software, because you are the guardrails now, right? If these software or these AI agents go rogue, they are doing some bad code output, you are the one who are able to still see that, okay, this is not how it should be done, this is how it should be done. With vibe coders, what problem happens is that they just always click on accept accept, and they are just burning through their tokens fast. They're burning through money. They're frustrated. They are building vulnerable apps. They're getting hacked, and there is no end to this. So I hope this video helps you fine tune your approach a little bit. Build software, but build it on a personal level. While you are building this, also keep on learning programming, right? That is important. That's all for this one. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video very soon.